Testing. Can everyone hear me okay? Is it possible to be slightly louder, please? How's that? Can everyone hear me okay at the back? Okay, brilliant. We are going to get going in 1 minute, but I'm going to start with an announcement about today. There is going to be some filming taking place in the room today. So if there's anyone who really wants to be out of the way of that filming, if they could maybe indicate, we've got Maddie at the back who's waving her hand. So if you want to make sure that you're not in shot for the filming, if you just let Maddie know, and then she'll make sure that that happens. I think that's that. And just checking, are we live? Okay, brilliant. So just a huge welcome to everyone who's come here today. Obviously, we're joined by lots of people here in Toynbee Hall, but we also have a live stream running on YouTube as well. And so whether you're with us in the room or on the live stream, just want to say a big thanks for coming here today. I think particularly in the context that we're in, no one here really needs convincing that it's more important than ever that we make space for events like this, where we can discuss the kind of changes that we need to the social security system. Obviously, we're getting lots of announcements about changes to social security, but they're nowhere near adequate, and they leave many of us questioning what more has to happen for the government to wake up to the reality that many of us face. So the purpose of today is twofold, really: to talk about our plan for a decent social security system, and that's our set of proposals that we published in January earlier this year, but due to Omicron, unfortunately, we weren't able to have the launch event that we had anticipated. And now we're some months on from the plan. The other purpose is really to talk about how we build support today. So this event is going to run until 4:30. We're going to have a break at 3 for around 15 minutes. And as I mentioned, the event is running in person, but we also have the live stream as well. We do need to make apologies now. We don't have full BSL interpretation for this event. We're very grateful to be joined by Paul today, our BSL interpreter, but BSL interpreters need to work in pairs, and there's only one, so we can't expect Paul to interpret everything today. There should be interpretation for part 1, part 2, and part 4 of the event if you're looking at the programme. And in terms of other housekeeping, just to make sure that everyone's got their phones turned off as well. And like with any event, if you just make sure, if you're contributing, that you're respectful to everyone in the room who's contributing or in the live stream as well. And in terms of structure, today's session is going to start with some of our Commission on Social Security Group members talking through some of the problems with the current system. Then we're going to have some of our group talking through the solutions that we've set out in the plan. And then we're going to go to our guest speakers to hear about how we can take the plan forward, as well as how we can build support behind actually affecting change in social security policies. And then we're going to open things up to a discussion after that, where it's as much of a chance for you to ask questions and make your reflections on the plan as it is for us to learn from you about how we can build support from the plan. Before we get into things properly, I just wanted to take a minute to recognise that there are some people here today, as well as some people who can't make it, who have made all of this work happen. And firstly, our primary funder, Trust for London, who's made our project possible. So Austin, Johanna, Jamie, Jess, and all the other colleagues at the Trust. They've gone far above and beyond what anyone might expect a funder to do in terms of support. And we're very grateful that they've invested in our work as they have. And of course, thanks to City Bridge Trust, whose significant support has meant that we've been able to put accessibility at the heart of our work as well. And particular thanks today to LSE, London School of Economics, whose funding allowed for this event to go ahead. And we're also very pleased, I think they might have disappeared, there they are, to have our wonderful friends from London Challenge Poverty Week here as well. And they're going to be doing some little bits of filming during the event. And it's been brilliant to work with them over the past couple of years. And I hope people tune into their programme of events next week. So I won't keep going on, but I will highlight just how much our project isn't down to our core group. It's been really positive to see how many organisations have put their faith in a project led by experts by experience. And it's our experts by experience, who are all sitting around me, who are central to everything that we do. There are a great many people with lived experience who provided so much insight to our project, but there is one in particular who can't be here today who's made great contributions to our work. Rosa Morris has contributed a great deal to the plan, as I mentioned here. Please take a look at it online if you're watching at home, particularly with her knowledge of disability benefits and her commitment to co-production. Projects like ours only have integrity when the people involved in them make sure that the principles that we espouse here aren't just empty words, but they're taken forward in every area of our work. And I'm sure Rosa's probably watching the live stream wishing I'd actually get on with it. So here are 3 things that we're really going to be emphasising today. First, the current benefits system is failing, and it needs a major updating, a major overhaul, not just tweaks. Second, the Commission has come up with a plan for a decent social security system. And unless someone's going to tell us otherwise today, it's the most comprehensive blueprint that we've got for a progressive and transformative way forward that exists. And third, one big way that change happens is when lots of different groups and individuals all start saying the same thing. And for the plan to have any chance of success, it needs other organisations and people supporting it and working together. And we don't expect that that will be without comments and criticisms today, so we really welcome your reflections in the discussion at the end. So what we're going to do now is take a look at the first points I've just mentioned. Current welfare benefits are failing. And to do with that, 3 of our commissioners are going to speak about some of the biggest problems with the system, beginning with Nigel. No rush. And just to say today, if you want any more information about our speakers, they are available in the bio document here.
Okay, first off, following Ellen's point, I'd like to welcome everybody here today. Most of the commissioners have done... Sorry.
Is that okay? Just
Yeah.
check the sound first.
Is that okay now?
Well, don't worry, Nigel, we'll just get the sound right first.
Is that better?
Testing, testing, how about that?
Anything now?
Sorry. Thank you.
Is that better? Right, sorry for that delay. As I was saying, following Ellen's welcome, I would also like to welcome everybody here today. It's been an absolute pleasure to work as one of the commissioners with everybody else to get to where we are today, and we really want this to work and eventually to be put into practice. Anyway, I'm here to talk about 2 parts of the plan today. Universal credit, the simplification of the benefit system, so we're told apparently. I'm not sure that anybody who has experienced universal credit is likely to recognise that description. Instead, it has caused chaos, havoc and despair for millions of people. One of the most important things to be able to have stability and security in anyone's life is a stable and consistent income. Universal credit starts off with causing insecurity and often debts due to the waiting period before the first payment, which means people will experience deductions from their UC benefits right from the start. Then many people continue to experience universal credit as a chaotic and unpredictable system. There is no guarantee of whatever level of payment someone will get each month, and many people experience inconsistencies in the payment rates due to a number of reasons, from those in work having to pay from the pay periods which don't match the universal credit assessment system, to having deductions due to debts, to experiencing a sanction. This all creates a system which sees increased levels of debt and unpredictability of income. and can be confusing to those on the receiving end, and people experience unnecessary time, energy and stress on trying to understand things and resolve the problems they face. Since the start of universal credit, one big issue that has been couples are treated as a joint claim. There's been a lot of campaigning highlighting the risks that this creates for financial abuse and making it harder for people to leave abusive relationships. Although it is possible to request separate payments, this is not the default and puts the pressure and responsibility on people who are already in very difficult situations. Another big issue is sanctions. Since they were reintroduced after the period of suspension during the COVID-19 lockdowns, rates of sanctions have soared. One of the biggest issues for people who are sanctioned is how difficult it can be to challenge the decision and how to know what your rights are. The Public Law Project found that very often those sanctions are applied unlawfully and that people struggle with understanding what their rights are and getting any access to justice or being able to challenge these sanctions. There have been many pieces of research and many testimonies by experts by experience which shows that sanctions do not work. They do not increase someone's ability to access or increase paid employment. Instead, they create insecurity, fear and chaos in people's lives as they struggle with managing bills and experience increased stress and a deterioration of mental and physical health. All of these problems with universal credit are making people's all these problems with universal credit make people at an increasing risk of homelessness. Research by Peabody and the National Housing Federation show that the majority of social housing claimants claiming UC are in rent arrears, and that means they face a reduction of their monthly universal credit payments by 20%. Ultimately, when someone is able to pay their rent, they end up homeless, and they are often not told that this makes them intentionally homeless. This is something that I have actually experienced for myself of being homeless. However, in my situation, it was not due to the benefit system. Because of that, I know how tough it can be to access the support you need and the long-term impact of being homeless. When a person is sanctioned, which can be from a month up to 3 years, and depending on how long the sanction is for, affects the housing benefit if you're on the legacy benefits or the housing element if you're on universal credit. I've lost my place. Yeah, right, if the rent is not going to be paid during that time, then obviously the claimant faces the possibility of eviction for non-payment of their rent. If they are a single person, they go to the council to register as homeless. Single people do not normally qualify for help from the council. So they end up sleeping rough on the streets. We've all seen that as we walk through our daily lives, people sleeping in shop doorways or parks or benches or wherever. And it just simply isn't good enough. Universal credit does not work. It is not simple. It creates instability, insecurity and debt. We need a system that is truly simple to understand and which provides true security and stability for all. Thank you very much for listening.
Now, if all goes to plan at the moment, we're going to have a pre-recorded video from one of our commission group members, Sharifah Patel. Sharifah is quite a tireless advocate for disabled people, women of colour, disabled carers, and it is her caring responsibilities that mean at the last minute she's not able to be here today, and we're really sorry that she can't be here. But she has very kindly managed to do a quick little recording so she could contribute, and hopefully that'll work out and it'll play now.
I'm Sharifah Patel. I am an Asian disabled woman and a carer. I'm proud to be part of the Commission on Social Security, where I raised the issue for disabled carers facing in getting the social security that we need. During the lockdown, we had claps for carers, but we need more than just clapping. 4.2 million people provide informal care, with unpaid carers saving the economy around £132 billion per year. Those who get carers allowance receive £69.70 a week for providing at least 35 hours of care. This is less than £2 an hour. We must value care work more. It can be incredibly tough and isolating being a carer, and having such a low income means you struggle to afford the basic, and your life shrinks. You have no money to travel, no money to get out, no money to see others, and you lose connection with the wider society and struggle to cope. This then produces a vicious cycle of the more your life shrinks, the worse your health gets. And the worse your health gets, the more your life shrinks. People providing the high level of care are twice as likely to be permanently sick or disabled. This is my situation. I am a disabled woman who is also a carer and a woman of colour. Despite disabled people being more likely to be carers, you constantly face discrimination, and it's both harder to access the support I require as a disabled person, as it's assumed I can't be disabled and providing care, and harder to access support as a carer, as if I'm disabled, it's assumed I can't also be providing care. And there is institutional racism added to this, and disabilityism. It is also hard to know what you're entitled to, and accessing support to try and understand this is very hard. This is made even harder when English isn't your first language. I support a lot of people in my local community who face multiple discrimination and barriers to accessing support. We need a transparent and accessible system. Despite 84% of the general public agreeing that the government should do more to support carers, none of the cost of living payments announced by the government earlier this year were directly aimed at supporting carers. In the 2019 manifesto, the government stated that they would introduce more rights around flexible working and leave that would benefit carers, but they failed to deliver on this. Inadequate social care means more people are reliant on informal care, and this both fails to recognise the work done by the informal carers and makes it harder for disabled people to have a choice and control over their care, and potentially increase the risk of abuse. These are just some of the issues I have seen facing disabled people, carers, and people of colour. These are the reasons that I continue to fight for a social security system that works for us all.
And now we're going to be joined by Osmond James. Osmond, if you use the microphone, speak into the microphone.
As well, with this stuff?
Oh, you're all good.
Yeah, I'm all wired for sound, apparently. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. Great mass. Right, my little monologue will be about their personal independence payments. A benefit supposedly to support with the additional costs that disabled people face. It was introduced to replace disability living allowance in 2013, with the aim to cut the number of people receiving it by 20%. A number with no actual basis or need of evidence that 20% of DLA claimants didn't have additional costs. So it wasn't introduced with the aim of understanding, acknowledging or meeting the additional costs we face as disabled people. It was introduced with the central aim of cutting supports. With this starting point, it perhaps isn't surprising that the experience of claiming PIP has been so awful for so many. We probably all know about the high rate of success at tribunals, 70%. But how many of us feel too ground down and exhausted to get to that stage? I've applied for PIP several times, each time being given 0 points. Each assessment has felt like I'm being judged, that I'm expected to tell a complete stranger personal and distressing details of my life, for them to determine if I'm worthy. They've asked questions that seem completely irrelevant to the daily activities I have difficulty with. For example, I was asked if I went to university, as if that would have any bearing on mental illness impacting on my daily life. Each and every time I've attempted to apply, I've been made to feel unworthy, as if I'm an underclass. There are lots of talks about mental illness and time to talk, time to end the stigma. But if you try to get help with the additional cost that mental illness causes, suddenly no one understands or cares. That isn't to say that the current PIP process works if you have a physical impairment. The undercurrent through the whole process is one of disbelief or making you feel unheard or trying to find ways to deny you support. Even if you manage to get letters or support from doctors or advocates to help you, these are dismissed as less important than the opinion of someone who met and spoke to you for over an hour or so. A tiny snapshot of your life used to make important decisions that result in additional income that can help grow and improve your life, or a denial and a shrinking and deterioration of your life. During our work as a commission, at the Commission, we have spoken about how even if someone started the PIP assessment process without experiencing any mental health problems, by the time they've gone through it, even if they're successful, it's likely that they're distressed, anxious, depressed, and feel humiliated and worn down. Sadly, it has been even worse than that for some people. Many of you may have heard of Philippa Day, but if you haven't, Philippa Day was a young disabled mother who died in 2019 after taking an overdose. The inquest into her death concluded that failures within the PIP system were the predominant factor and the only acute factor that led to her suicide. There were 28 separate systematic errors in her case that meant instead of her being awarded the enhanced rate for both parts of PIP, which it was eventually determined there was enough evidence for, she faced 11 months in the run-up to her death in a battle of being dismissed and disbelieved. The private company who the DWP paid to complete PIP assessments ended up having to pay compensation to Philippa's family. But it is unclear whether there have been any lessons learned or improvements made as a result of this horrific case. For example, the latest data for appeals show that the majority are decided on exactly the same evidence as assessment companies and DWP use to reach their decision. So, as with Philippa's case, the evidence was there, it just wasn't listened to. Some of my fellow commissioners will be talking more about how our plan will improve the social security system to make it truly decent and provide security for all. But I just want to stress that, as with every part of our work, the development of a replacement for PIP needs to have deaf and disabled people at its core, to truly create a process that works, that doesn't cause additional distress, that recognises that we are the experts of our lives and our bodies. I thank you.
So a very big thanks to Nigel, Osmond and Sharifah for their very powerful contributions, and I'm sure a lot of people can identify strongly with what they said. I think we've probably all had experience here of attending events where problems with the current system have been laid out and then everyone agrees that something needs to be done, but what exactly is kind of left hanging. The Commission set out to be different. We've always made space to acknowledge how terrible the current system is, but from the beginning, our focus has been what would be better. And to do that, we didn't just sit on our own in a room and think up ideas. Back in 2019, we issued a call for solutions, and that enabled us to identify potential areas of consensus and draw up draft proposals. In 2020, we then undertook another huge round of consultation, asking people to say what they thought of our draft proposals. And then we did further work in 2021 as well. And then the outcome for this has been the plan for a decent social security system. And that's available online, and for people in the room, you will have hard copies of it as well. And that's the result of a process that took over 3 years and involved literally thousands of people. And the plan was published earlier this year, so hopefully lots of you will have already seen it. But part of today is about a formal launch. So we are going to highlight some of the key points from our plan. The first thing that we did before developing our work was to set out some key principles. And to do that, Latoya is going to explain these. Latoya, if you want to go to the lectern.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Latoya, and I'm a part of the Commission for Social Security. I want to tell you, firstly, about the 5 principles for Social Security that we have. So we wanted to make sure that, firstly, everyone has enough money to live and for any extra things they need in day-to-day life, such as disability or childcare. The second principle is that everyone is treated with dignity, fairness, and respect, and that they are trusted to make choices for themselves. Thirdly, that Social Security should be a public service and a right to get everything that you need. The fourth principle is that we need to be clear and friendly and accessible for everyone who needs it. And it involves people who have experience and lived experiences of those issues. And people can engage with the system properly. We need to make sure that everyone has access to the system and that free support and advice is available to make sure that people can access the system and learn what they have a right and entitlement to. And all of these things underpin everything that we've created in our plan. Thank you very much.
You good? Yeah, should we good to go?
Yep.
We're just going to get a mic, okay?
Okay, cool.
If you... It's all right. Good. Oh, Maria's going to... No rush. Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
I should have added before Barry begins that one of the biggest questions that we get is how will our proposals be paid for? And that's what Barry's going to talk us through now. Over to you, Barry.
The government has lots of power when it comes to money and how they choose to spend it. Things like the ability to borrow money and the option to set higher taxes. For the rich and businesses. The government also finds money for things when it wants to do something. Social Security should be seen as an investment in people and an investment in the local community. There are differences to each there are definitely enough. There is definitely enough money to provide social security for all of us, and the government wants to.
I think Barry couldn't be more right. I think we know it's about intention, and if the government wants to invest in social security, it could. Over now to hear from Mike, who's going to talk to us about the idea for a guaranteed decent income. Thanks, Mike. Do you want to check the sound?
Yeah, check the sound. Hello, everybody, and I'm amazed to see so many people here today. I was expecting quite a few fewer people, so I'm a bit nervous. So please bear with me. Okay, ready to go? Right. All our work showed that universal credit isn't working. It needs to be scrapped and replaced with a different approach. So the big question then is, what should replace universal credit? Our proposal is for a guaranteed decent income. Our starting point was the principle, as explained earlier by Latoya and Sharifah, that social security means taking care of making sure everybody has enough money to live with dignity and take part in their communities. We looked at different options for what enough money to live might look like in practice, and found that the best solution we found the best solution by adopting the Joseph Roundtree Foundation's minimum income standards. Now, these are figures based on a long-standing and ongoing process of research, asking members of the public what they consider to be an appropriate standard of living. These figures are produced each year. Of course, you will understand that the figures I'm quoting today were those at the time of our deliberations, so they will be revised in light of current events and the ongoing cost of living crisis. But as a reference point, current Joseph Roundtree Foundation figures are around £227 per week for a single person and £327 per week for a couple. At that point, things became a little bit tricky because our consultations found that a very strong view that there should be a completely individual approach with no couple rate at all. We considered that. We found a way of achieving that aim which would still link with the Joseph Roundtree Foundation figures. And at this point, there's usually quite a long discussion of a table which is available if anybody needs to see it. The guaranteed decent income would mean that if anybody's weekly income was ever below the GDI level, they'd have their income topped up to the GDI level. If anyone had no income at all, they would get the full EDI amount. If they had some income, perhaps wages or pensions, that these were below GDI level, then income would be topped up to meet the GDI level. The guaranteed decent income would replace not just universal credit, but also any remaining claims for legacy benefits, such as employment support allowance, job seekers allowance, income support and tax credits. Everybody aged 18 and over would be eligible to apply for the benefits, including people of pension age. There would be no job search requirements, no sanctions, no two-child limit, no benefit cap, no bedroom tax, no 5-week wait, and no reduced rate for under 25s. And those are all items that you'll be familiar that are real sticking points with the current universal credit system. Okay. Current means testing would be abolished and replaced with a light touch approach, similar to the way tax and tax self-assessments is used for deciding income. Support with housing costs and council tax would be completely separate from the system that we're proposing. Right, there's more details on pages 9 through 13 of the plan, but to summarise, the guaranteed decent income would meet the Joseph Roundtree Foundation minimum income standard figures, be completely individual with no couple rate, be a huge simplification of the current system, and have minimal conditions and replace standard means testing with a light touch approach. So things like conditionality and claimant commitments that are also a bit of a sticking point with universal credit, they'd go as well. Okay, right. Thank you very much. I hope I wasn't talking too fast. I'm astounded how nervous I was, and I'm grateful for everybody for being so patient with me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. And now we're going to have Maria to talk about some of the other elements in the plan as well.
I'll just do a sound check. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you. So there needs to be support for bringing up children. Rather than including this in the guaranteed decent income, there is already a very good option, child benefit. Child benefit has lots of advantages. It's universal. It mainly goes to women. It is simple to administer and to understand. The only problem with child benefit is how low it is. And you get an even lower amount after your first child. So the Commission's proposal is for a significant increase in child benefit, and it should be the same rate for every child. Another key proposal is to replace the PIP with a new non-means tested benefit to cover the extra costs that deaf and disabled people face due to illness, impairments, and based on the social model of disability. This is covered in the plan on pages 15 to 17, so please do read in detail what we are proposing there. And on those pages, this includes the new benefit being co-produced with deaf and disabled people. There are also 3 suggested payment rates. A lower rate of £83.70 per week, a middle rate of £152.15 per week, and a higher rate of £230.77 per week. We're now doing further work on designing a new assessment process. And if anyone's interested in that, please do get in touch. It's a big area. The final theme I'll mention is that prevention is better than cure. Currently, benefits are being used to try to solve problems that could be prevented by improvements in other areas or to other areas. There's a whole list like jobs and decent pay, decent conditions, no zero-hour contracts, a free early childhood education and care system, refugees, asylum seekers and migrants having access to public funds just like everyone else, and building social housing. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
So that was the core of the plan, and I'm grateful to all of our steering group for talking us through that. And what we're going to have next is some speakers who have been involved in the Commission's work. And first up, we have Kate Summers from the London School of Economics.
Thanks. Shall I try? Can you hear me okay? How's that? Can you hear me now? A bit closer. Great. Wave at me if I'm still not loud enough. It's really great to be here today. So like Ellen said, my name's Kate Summers. I work as a researcher at the London School of Economics, and it's been a real privilege to act in a supporting capacity in various ways through a lot of the life of the Commission. I want to talk very briefly about the plan in context, and by in context I mean both the current political moment, but then also thinking about what this is compared to other kind of similar initiatives and projects. So just briefly I want to say something about both the content of this plan and about the process of all these people, who you are and what you have achieved together, and I think kind of reflect briefly on that. So in terms of putting the plan in context, in terms of what's in here, there are 2 things I really wanted to emphasise that I think and I would say this maybe because I've been involved, but why this is so impressive and such a strong demand in terms of how we should think about social security policy. What this plan is doing is breaking down silos in a way that I think a lot of initiatives and organisations tend to think about these things as individual separate issues for example, people in work or people with children or people with caring responsibilities. And I think the commissioners involved in the project should really be applauded for the holistic way that they've approached this and the way that they've really managed to break down those silos and think about this and make this bold, overarching set of demands. And I think then linked to that, secondly, the thing I'd say about the content of the plan is it's really ambitious. And I think having the privilege of sitting in the room as commissioners have talked through, or now the steering group as you're now called, talk through all of these issues, there's the tension of feeling things are really bad and we need to do something right now. But I think another impressive thing to highlight is that also at the same time as recognising that, what this group of people have done is sat back and said, no, we need to be ambitious enough to propose really quite big-scale reform rather than putting sticking plasters over some of the current emergency issues. And I think then it's the authority of experience that these group of people bring to it that means that they have the confidence to be able to say some things we do need to start again on, like with PIP, like with the guaranteed replacing PIP, and like with the guaranteed decent income. So I think that really should be applauded. And secondly, very briefly, I'd like to say something about process and putting that in context. I think the timescale of what this project has looked like has meant that because it has taken place over years, and that's also a thanks, I should say, to Trust for London for, I know, the kind of trust that has been built between the funder and the project has meant that the Commission as a collective have learnt together over time and developed your way of thinking about how you create change. That's something really special that I know isn't always easy, but that you should be really, I'm proud to be a part of in a small way. And I think linked to that as well, and the kind of final thing I'll say on process is that a lot of initiatives like this involve this, but I think in particular your work is I'm really aware when I sit in the room with commissioners, the balance and the skill that you have in kind of combining, bringing yourselves and the emotion involved in these topics and bringing them in a clear-headed way to think about these really knotty, difficult policy issues. And balancing those two things is what means you produce this plan. And again, kind of, I want to stand here and applaud you for that. To end to say, we're in a really difficult political moment. And I think, once again, it's kind of testament to the plan, though, that this plan that's been developed over years doesn't feel irrelevant now. It feels completely relevant, despite it being developed at a time when we couldn't have imagined what the kind of current political and economic situation looked like. So once again, congratulations to all of you, and it's a real privilege to be a part of. Thank you.
So a huge thanks to Kate. I know that we've all really valued her input over the years. And next up is someone who has been involved since the Commission was just an idea. And to provide a funder's perspective, we have Austin Taylor-Leybourne from Trust for London. If you want to come and join me.
Thank you, Ellen. Can people hear me? Is my voice...
No, we'll get a mic.
All right.
Thanks, Maria.
Cheers, thank you. Yeah, can people hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm Austin Taylor-Leybourne, and I'm a grants manager with Trust for London. Similar to Kate, I feel very privileged to be here. I mean, having been at the beginning of, actually even before it became a commission, a lot of the groundwork that was done by the individuals who've spoken was to decide what sort of model would be useful and effective in taking forward what they saw as being aspirational in terms of configuring a better welfare benefit system. So to be here probably about 4 or 5 years ahead at this point, it's very humbling. I think the commissioners have done a huge amount of work and would like to applaud them as well. Clearly, there are significant achievements that the commissioners and the Commission has secured. One of them is actually getting the Commission together to begin with and working together. One of the key aims of the funding right at the beginning was to work within a consensus-building model. At the time, that seemed very doable, it seemed very realistic, and the right thing to do. And I hate that phrase, but it was the right thing to do because we wanted to put people with first-hand experience at the heart of pushing forward changes and solutions to the system. It wasn't easy. We've got to this point, we've got the 5 principles, or the Commissioners got the 5 principles, and there's been a lot of work. It wasn't easy, consensus building wasn't easy, but again, it was incredibly enriching, I think, for me to be part of that process. Frustrating because as a funder, you sit there and often you were there in a position of power. You give money, you give the assets to people who you want them basically to do work or to deliver within a scope of what you as a funder want. So it was quite frustrating to work in that model where, to a certain extent, and I didn't always achieve this, to sit back and not have a voice. But what was crucial to that was actually, as a funder, shifting the power, sharing that power, the fact that even though I was there as a funder, as others of the Secretariat were there, we had no decision-making votes. We were there as possibly, to pose questions and observers. So getting the Commission together was a huge, enriching achievement. The other achievements, obviously, as Kate and others have mentioned, are to do with the consultations, the call for solutions, the public consultation, both of which had over 1,000 solutions. And I think as well, another achievement is actually through Kate and LSE, is to think about building capacity of the commissioners and the Commission in terms of being able to codify and collate, over 1,000 different responses was a difficult task. And actually achievement was to get to a point where there were, I think I'm right in saying, there was agreement on 42 out of 43 of the key recommendations, and that to me was a huge achievement. Then going down the process to have the white paper and 5 principles which personally and professionally I can't see anybody objecting to. They are value driven and they should be there to underpin the welfare benefit systems. And I think what the Commission has been really good at doing is not only collecting the evidence from a public audience, but from their own experience, but also coming up with solutions. The plan and some of the solutions in there are solutions. It's not saying, actually, it's difficult, it's challenging, it's not working. It's actually thinking through what would make it work. And I think that has been a real, a real plus, basically, in pushing forward. The Commission itself is in a transitional stage, I would guess. One of the things that, as a funder, we have aspirations for is for the Commission to become a standalone think tank, led by people with first-hand experience of social welfare. And they're here. You've heard their experience. And I think it's up to funders in terms of the model that they work, actually not to think as much about risk, about handing over power in that sense, but trusting more in those individuals who are at the heart of that experience to then deliver on the funding that we've given to those individuals and people like the Commission. Yeah, so it's a very crucial time in the development of the Commission. It's a very crucial time in terms of social policy and economic and political policy. But as everybody has said, it is a very, very crucial time for the Commission. And it is very, very unique in as much as if we consider it to be a think tank, and let's face it, a lot of think tanks are very top-down, to think of the Commission as a think tank of user-led individuals who know about what it's like to claim benefits and what needs to change. So I basically look forward to the next phase of the Commission. I would say to other funders that it is risky, this particular model. It has been risky, but it has been incredibly enriching. And to those other funders that have come on board, such as City Bridge, LSE, who've provided some money, Strathclyde University, who's done some of the modelling, it is hugely important that to put people with first-hand experience at the forefront of social change and social action. Thank you.
So now is time for another apology. We were going to have Emma Congreve joining us from the Fraser of Allender Institute at the University of Strathclyde to talk to us about statistical modelling. And Emma Congreve very kindly did a presentation for us, as she couldn't be here today. We're very sorry that this morning there was a technical glitch and now we can't get the video to play. So huge apologies for this, and I'm going to do her presentation no justice by just very quickly talking through some of the points that her work and her team's work is going to cover. So we wanted to check that the proposals in our plan were definitely going to benefit people, and that there wouldn't be any unintended consequences or anyone that lost out as a result of the proposals we put forward. And Emma is an expert in the field, and last year she undertook some statistical modelling, which is on the Commission's website for anyone who's interested. And we are really pleased that in this phase of our work, Lloyds Bank Foundation have awarded funding so that Emma and her team can undertake more detailed research. And that's going to be 3 elements. So firstly, and very positively, the initial modelling found that guaranteed decent income and increased child benefit would make over 30 million people better off. And so the work that she's going to do in this phase would be a more detailed analysis of household type, geography, and other factors as well. The second bit of initial modelling did identify concerns around a relatively small number of people who would be less worse off under our plans. And so there were options looked at, such as a disability supplement under a guaranteed decent income, but there was no specific solution that resolved these issues. So the new work that Emma and her team are going to look at is going to be to look into that more closely. And that's going to be quite an in-depth part of our work. So if anyone, it sounds like anyone here is interested, anyone on the live stream watching at home, please do get in touch with us, because we'd love to have more people involved in that strand of our work. And the third is the question of costs. And that's something that Barry talked about earlier. We're really keen to develop the idea of the social security system taking a more holistic approach. And so Emma and her team are going to look at developing an economic case for social security as an investment. So that work will hopefully be completed in the new year, and there might be an event around that time as well. So just really watch this space on that piece of work. And if any of that sounds interesting, please get in touch, because we'd love to have more people involved in that. And apologies again to Emma, because her presentation was a lot better than my waffle there. So the final speaker that we have before the break is Nikki Hawkins, who is Director of Communications at On-Road Media. I think everyone here knows how appallingly benefit claimants have been scapegoated over many years. So for the proposals in the plan to be heard, we need some new ways to talk about social security, and hopefully Nikki's got all the answers.
No pressure. Can you all hear me? Is that all good? Yeah?
Is that a bit louder?
Is that better? Yeah, great. Hi everyone, it's nice to see you. I don't think I know very many of you in the room, so just by way of a brief introduction, I work on communications and framing, so how can we take important, necessary solutions and talk about them in ways that mean that they get the support and popularity that they deserve and need to have to become possible. So we did some work over the summer, a couple of focus groups and some surveys where we basically took the ideas contained in the plan and sort of took them to members of the public, chatted about them, and then tested some different ways of talking about them. So we've got a guide coming out which will focus on kind of what we found, what we heard, and also what we're recommending in terms of which communications, which messages work well. And there is some really good news in there. So I want to start by saying there's a lot to play for, a lot of sort of latent public support and a lot of potential for the fantastic work that has been done by the Commission. So I'm just going to talk through briefly some big kind of highlights of what we heard in terms of how people are thinking about these issues at the moment and the types of things that we're recommending in terms of your communications and messages. So it won't surprise you to know that the cost of living is really dominating at the moment, and that's really shaping people's thinking. So there's a real kind of recognition of the structural causes of hardship right now. So no one we heard in our focus groups talked in kind of stigmatizing ways about poor choices. People were very focused on this idea that actually lots and lots of people simply do not have enough money coming in to cover what has to go out. That people are recognising that this is widespread. So people saying people are really going to struggle, even those who haven't before. Yeah, just a really simple statement, people saying people do not have enough money coming in to cover what has to go out. So this kind of better understanding of kind of what causes hardship is, I think, really welcome and really important. But there is a danger that there's a kind of, this is seen as a moment caused by the cost of living crisis that we're specifically seeing at the moment, you know, the war in Ukraine, rather than part of a long-term trend and the result of political choices. And some other kind of watch out is that when it comes to who people think is responsible, there's a very fractured sense of responsibility. So some people talk about landlords, some people talk about employers, some people talk about government agencies, different government. Obviously, these institutions all have different roles to play, but there isn't a kind of sense of clarity around who should be leading and the potential. And connected to that, people are very disillusioned with politics and institutions generally at the moment. So there's a kind of lack of belief that the government can and will take responsibility and do what's needed. So there's a real fatalism and a sense of disillusionment to overcome with communications. So when we turned to talking about the social security system, we found that it wasn't kind of top of mind for people as a thing that is there to improve lives. But when you do introduce it and you frame it in effective ways, people can become very enthusiastic about that, and crucially are really enthusiastic about a lot of the proposals contained in the Commission's plan. So some really nice quotes that we'll include in our report, but really a strong sense of kind of, yes, this is really good stuff, this is what needs to happen, but you kind of had to point it out, you had to say it. And people tend to see when they're thinking about, you know, what's their experience of the social security system, they tend to think about very individualistic experiences. So they think about kind of what has happened to them, or maybe a family member or a friend at the hands of a kind of rigid and unfeeling system. And they don't think, oh, well, actually there's lots of people who have experienced similar things, and there's a kind of collective need for it to be better and different. And people assume other people have very kind of negative attitudes towards people who rely on social security. So a really good quote. I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but I do. So this was a woman who strongly agreed with the proposals in the plan, but assumed nobody else would. And I think that was fairly standard. People thought actually that their desire for better and desire for different made them an outlier or an anomaly. And actually, there's lots of different people who have had negative experiences who would like things to be better. So there's everything to play for. So what works? Really centering the system, bringing to life what the social security system is and could be. Because when prompted, people do take pride in the sort of principles upon which the social security system was established and can be made to serve. So we need to keep activating that and reinforcing it. A really key phrase, I think if you remember one thing about what I'm recommending, the best phrase that we tested was talking about a system that is for everyone, especially those who need it most. The reason that that is effective is that it navigates some of the concerns people have. People are worried about being left out, and they don't necessarily understand some of what's so beautifully expressed in the plan around kind of universal and targeted. So just being able to say, for a system for everyone, especially those who need it most, just really resonates for people and reassures them. And it just feels unarguable. It feels like something that is obviously going to be good. Be clear that it's normal to support a strong social security system. Don't assume that you're up against a hostile crowd. A little kind of device that worked well was talking about kind of updating or upgrading the system so that it works for today's world. So people can see that change happens over time and that changes need to be made intentionally to kind of catch up with that. And they can see that actually the system is not working as it is. And if we couch it in those terms, it feels, again, just like a really obvious, natural thing that needs to happen. Remind people that the government has a responsibility. Again, it's there, it's deep down in people, but it needs priming, it needs bringing up. And if you talk about the social security system, but bring to life what you mean, and because for some people that phrase has a real resonance and real clarity. For others, especially younger audiences, it seems to be less kind of meaningful. So we can kind of, for want of a better term, take back control of what that term means, and kind of load it with those positive associations. So big up solutions. I think people are really crying out for things that could make life better for everyone. And I think that there's a lot to tap into in really taking pride in what the work that the Commission has done and its ability to kind of be popular and be supported by lots of people. So I don't know how I'm doing for time. Am I?
You go. Okay,
so I'm going to read out the kind of message that we are recommending as the kind of way to talk about this. You don't have to say it in these exact words, but this is just as an example. So, people across the UK want an updated social security system so that everyone, especially those who need it most, can thrive. Social security is our society's approach to welfare, benefits and state support. The system was designed to support everyone, but as times have changed, the government hasn't updated and upgraded it to meet modern challenges. There are a number of ways our government can modernise the social security system so it responds to society's needs. For example, we can, and then insert the detail of specific policies. Our government has a responsibility to make changes like this to support us all to get by. Or, the short version, more and more people are calling for the government to upgrade the social security system so that everyone, especially those who need it most, can thrive in today's world. Those are the messages. And we will have a guide that will be shared in due course, probably in the next couple of weeks. And we're planning on doing a kind of longer workshop for people who'd like to kind of come along, hear more, ask questions, maybe have a practice of how to use some of this stuff. But I hope that that has been somewhat helpful. And thanks for having me.
So, huge thanks to Nikki, and that was a great note to leave it on. And I probably have not got the words in the right order, but I think it was something like a system that is for everyone, especially for those who need it most, so that it can thrive in today's world. And I think that's a really nice note to end it on before we all go on our break now. So we should have a break for about 15 minutes. For those who are here, there should be some tea and coffee. If you're watching the live stream at home, maybe make yourself a tea and coffee. Catch you back in about 15 minutes. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so I should just check, is my sound working okay? Can everyone hear me clearly? Brilliant. Welcome back. Thanks, everyone. So, next part, reflecting on the plan and building support. So at the start of the session, I said that one of the themes that we're going to be emphasising is that one big way change happens is when your mic falls on the floor. Is when lots of different groups and individuals all start saying the same thing. And so for the plan to have any chance of success, we need other organisations and people to be supporting it and working together to make sure it's as strong as it can be. I also said it's something we're going to be really challenging everyone on this afternoon. So I'm delighted that we now have some brilliant speakers from a range of groups and perspective who have kindly agreed to reflect on the plan. And first up, we have Anila Anwar. Welcome.
I was just saying I was dreading coming up here because I wasn't sure how far I would see over, if the microphone would reach the right part of my face, but I'm assuming people in the room can hear me. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks. Listen, it's an absolute privilege to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. For those of you that don't know, I'm Anila, the Chief Executive of Z2K. We're an anti-poverty charity working with people in London to help overcome their social welfare issues, often challenging government decision-making. And we use the evidence from our casework to campaign to change the policy and practice that drives that injustice. You've heard from commissioners this morning outlining the various different challenges and injustices that they've experienced and that others do too. I mean, my reflections on the plan, it's a plan that is rich with proposals that we fully support. I'd like to congratulate and thank the Commission for their incredible work and development of a transformative and ambitious plan, and I think we've heard both those words quite a lot this morning, which, you know, crucially has dignity and respect at its heart. It's a plan that has a strong focus on adequacy, accessibility, social justice, intersectionality, all of which are crucial in creating a system that treats people with that dignity, with that respect. And we too believe that adequate, stable income, genuinely affordable housing are key to creating that more equal society where everyone has the chance of a dignified life. So we're really happy to be here supporting that plan. And we couldn't agree more that we need a new agenda on social security, with experts by experience at the centre of designing that new system. I'm going to make a reference to beverage, and I was laughing with Bill earlier about that. But you know, the social security system that was designed was supposed to, stand alongside the NHS as a central pillar of the welfare state. In the last 30 years, that pillar has been broken. We heard earlier around some of the framing works about upgrading the system or updating the system, and I fully accept from a strategic communications approach that's probably the right thing to do, but it's not happened by accident. The universalism of social security has become more and more residualised and a localised safety net with strict conditionality and a shift towards charity in place of rights. I don't think anything symbolises that shift more than staff at job centres handing out vouchers for local food banks when people have had their ESA cut off or have been sanctioned. And we think this plan provides an excellent basis to restore the strength of that pillar and move towards a more equal society that we all believe in. And we fully support the 5 values-driven principles that have been set out this morning. And one of those is around having free, independent advice, and that's something that Z2K provides to people in London. We help people challenge government decisions, as I said, and we've seen steadily over the last 5 years the number of people coming to us for support to appeal wrong, incorrect disability benefits decisions each year. Like most people who provide support, we have a success rate of over 80%. And we've heard this morning about the statistics that show tribunals often overturn decisions based on the exact same evidence that was available to assessors. And we know that appeals process is a very, very long and arduous process that shouldn't have to happen. Decisions should be made right first time. So we want to see fundamental reform of the discredited and demeaning assessments. We know our clients think that they are degrading, hostile, discriminatory. We've heard from clients telling us that they don't think assessors understand their conditions, listen to what they have to say, or that reports at the end reflect what they've been told. And one of our clients in one of our surveys that we had out recently said, I repeated several times to the assessor how much pain I was in, which was visible. They still asked me to do physical tests, leaving me in tears and in severe pain. So, absolutely, as it states in the plan, we need fundamental change. We need to take the onus off the person to prove their disability. And we need to approach this reformed system around the social model of disability, and we absolutely commit to working with the Commission to press ahead for a better assessment system that is co-produced with disabled people. And we were really disappointed that the government's Health and Disability Green Paper last summer didn't meaningfully engage with experts by experience, and this has to change. It's vital going forward that disabled and unemployed people aren't just seen as users or customers, but play an intrinsic role in the creation and delivery of this new system that's been imagined. As one expert by experience we spoke to said, assessments processes specifically should be co-produced with disabled people and based on a social model of examination of the social economic barriers facing each individual. So wholly behind that. Another area that I'd just like to quickly touch on, I don't want to take up too much time, and if you've seen my notes, I've scored out many things and written lots of additional things because we've heard it all this morning. I don't really think there's much more for me to add, but on decent income adequacy, I think we absolutely agree that we need a system that provides enough money for people to live on, and really I want to see us moving beyond this. As long as someone isn't destitute, the social security system should be there to prevent poverty, and we've heard about the principle and outcome around prevention from the plan. We agree that we need a significant rise in the rates of social security benefits, and that we have additional support for those who do have additional costs. And we need to remove the other hostile policies outside of the assessments process, such as the benefit cap, sanctions, deductions, two-child limit, which are punitive. And the guaranteed decent income proposal in the plan rightly demands an end to those punishing policies, which simply push people into poverty and destitution. So, we're very, very supportive of that. We've long argued against the freeze on working age benefits, the refusal of government to uprate legacy benefits by the same as universal credit during the pandemic, and we look forward to the outcome of the appeal that's going to the Court of Appeal in a couple of months. And we want to see an end, really, to our clients having to ask for hardship grants and support so that they can make ends meet, so they can afford the basic essentials. That should be the core pillar of the social security system that we have. And we absolutely, as a rights-based organisation, are firm believers in calling for the best possible outcomes for people accessing social security. Change might happen incrementally, but we absolutely share the Commission's goal of a renewed system which gives everyone enough to live on and treats people with dignity and respect. So I'm incredibly grateful for all of the work of the Commission, the research, the modelling, the ambition that's contained within the plan. I really look forward to working together, I hope, moving forward after the event today. I look forward to seeing more of the modelling that's been that's going to be worked on by Fraser Valander. But, Barry said something earlier that really struck with me, which was we need to invest in people, and that's absolutely the case. So whatever Z2K can do to support the Commission, to support the plan, to, raise it with decision makers and other people in positions of power, absolutely. It's provided such a valuable contribution to much needed debate about transformative action addressing the root causes of poverty and inequality that we have today. So, thanks.
Thanks so much for that, Anila. And over to Victoria Benson from Gingerbread.
Hi, you can hear me, I think.
Oh, can hear.
Can you hear me? So it's Victoria Benson.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm Victoria Benson. I'm Chief Exec of Gingerbread. And for you, those of you who don't know, Gingerbread is a charity working in England and Wales that supports single-parent families. Thank you so much for inviting me here today to speak. We completely agree that the welfare system doesn't suit single parents and needs complete reform. Just by way of background, there are nearly 2 million single parents in this country, and 75% of them are on universal credit. By the time universal credit's fully rolled out, there'll be 90% of them on universal credit. And single parents are twice as likely to be in poverty as couple parents, but close to 70% of them work. The problem is they're stuck in low-paid jobs due to their caring responsibilities, and there's a lack of flexible work and a lack of affordable childcare. So we're really supportive of much of this plan, and we agree with much of the paper. For example, the suggestion of a guaranteed decent income linked to the minimum wage with extra amounts for disability. We definitely agree that the 2-child limit, benefit cap and sanctions are unfair and should be got rid of. By way of context, I think it's something like 88% of the people affected by the benefit cap are single parents. We also agree that reduced levels for under 25s are unfair and should be got rid of. A 24-year-old single parent will have the same living expenses as a 26-year-old single parent. Current benefit levels are way too low and just aren't enough to live on. And the experience of claiming for them is stressful, demoralising, and there's a lot of stigma. Just by way of caveat, the things I'm about to say might be contained in the detail of the paper, so apologies if they are. Single parents, two factors that are really important for single parents are children and childcare. And it's not clear from the proposals relating to the amount of child benefit and childcare. And this is something that affects many of our callers because single parents are much more likely to be able to afford childcare. So there's reference to child benefit, but if this is the only benefit that will be received for children, it seems quite low, because currently you're entitled to £56 a week plus child benefit of £21.80 a week. So while the adult entitlement that you've proposed is much more generous, the child entitlement is lower. And of course, that might be contained in the detail of the plan. Similarly, there is mention of free nursery places and help with very young children, which we welcome. But I wonder whether there is further consideration of childcare and reimbursement of childcare costs for older children. And there need to be provision for childcare costs for older children because most single parents do rely on formal childcare. Other points in terms of housing, many single parents do need support for rent, and we'd need further detail on that. We definitely support universal free dentists, school meals and medication, and we agree with the removal of the requirement to look for work. You asked me what would the plan need for my organisation to support it. Well, we are supportive of the plan. I think it would be great if single parents were mentioned as one of the specific groups. Single parents face a great deal of discrimination and hardship. They're one of the largest groups on benefits. However, they're disproportionately living in hardship. Nearly half of single parents are in poverty. And in fact, this predates the pandemic, so it's likely to be much higher now. And twice as many children of single parents are in poverty as those in couple parents. They're more likely to be living in insecure housing. They're more likely to be in debt. They're hugely disproportionately affected by the benefit cap, the 2-child limit and sanctions. They're expected to work when both flexible work and childcare are not readily available, forcing them into low-paid jobs which they don't want to do. And they have to start preparing to go back to work when their youngest child is 2, which is one of the youngest in the world. The child maintenance system, which is also meant to support them, is broken. So what we'd like to see, we like the minimum decent income. We like the requirement not to have to seek work. We like the free school meals, dentists and childcare. We'd like to see more detail around childcare and childcare costs. There would need to be an amount paid for each child which reflects the cost of bringing up that child, allowing for a minimum level of living. We'd also like to say, and I'm not sure if this is covered in the detail, that the Sure Start maternity grant hasn't been increased for years. And it needs bringing up in line to what it actually costs to have a baby. And housing costs. They need to reflect true housing costs and associated housing reform so that single parents have a right to live in suitable housing without eviction and without overcrowding or unfit conditions. So, in conclusion, we will support the change to the social security system. But for many single parents, many of the problems are caused by deep-rooted structural issues, lack of flexible, well-paid jobs, lack of affordable, flexible childcare, an inadequate child maintenance system, and huge amounts of stigma and discrimination. And we believe it's these issues that really need addressing. But we're very happy to work with the Commission in further developing this plan, and we're happy to give as much support as we can in doing this. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Victoria. And now we have Ellen Clifford.
Thanks, Ellen. Is the mic that okay? Cool. So some of you may know that I have been involved with the Commission as a Commissioner and was involved in development of these proposals at different stages, but today I'm speaking on behalf of Disabled People Against Cuts, DPAC. And we've been asked to give our thoughts on the plan and what we would need in order to support it. And overwhelmingly, the plan chimes with what we want to see in the future social security system. So I hope Commissioners see the specific points I'm about to make very much within that context of wide support for the plans. But we do have in mind the next phase of the Commission's work and questions that we have, detailed questions about the plans. But firstly, thank you so much to the organisers for inviting DPAC to be part of today and be involved with these progressive proposals. Before the pandemic, disabled people represented 68% of the benefit caseload, yet within mainstream debate on the social security system, we're always treated very much as a marginal issue. And Anila mentioned Beveridge, and we are very aware that Beveridge was a keen eugenicist who deliberately had reasons for wanting to leave out disabled people. And that's been a problem within the benefit system throughout its history. So DPAC very much recognises the centrality of disability within the Commission's work. To create a social security system that is fit for purpose, that's only going to succeed where disability is adequately factored in, and I'd argue where there's involvement of deaf and disabled experts by experience. DPAC particularly welcomes the proposals for a guaranteed decent income, GDI, and for a new benefit to replace personal independence payment. We love the way that a GDI would be both targeted at need, but also universally ensure that everyone has enough money to live on with no conditions attached. That would stop people falling through the gaps because they're unable to navigate the system, and it would also remove the trauma of assessments and sanctions that not only cost huge amounts to administer, but also leave a not insignificant section of the population traumatised, destabilised, less able to participate in society, and further from employment, as we heard from commissioners at the start of today. We'd, however, question how far tying the GDI to wages will ensure it provides a decent standard of living, and wonder if there's a bit better way to do it that can account for inflation. DPAC's support for the Commission's proposals would also depend upon how the additional costs for deaf and disabled people with respect to the extra barriers we face to employment are dealt with. We really support the division within the proposals between the additional costs of being long-term out of work and facing barriers to employment, and the additional costs of living with an impairment stroke difference, which is represented by the replacement for PIP suggestion. We think those definitely need to be kept separately. We very much support that's in the proposals. And I think we'd also like to see enshrined that no disabled person will be worse off under the new system, and no household containing disabled members would be worse off compared to either legacy benefits or universal credit. And by which we don't mean individuals currently accessing the social security system, but we mean disabled people in the abstract. So, for example, disabled lone parents with disabled children wouldn't be worse off under the Commission's proposals, disabled people living alone wouldn't be, etc. And we think that transition payments could be controversial. We also have a concern that just relying on increasing child benefit to address child poverty may not be the best use of money if affordability becomes an issue, because child benefit is universal and that a more targeted approach may be more effective. And we heard from Nikki that there is popular support for targeted approaches. So through, for example, alongside increasing child benefit, a child supplement to the GDI with increased rates for disabled children. The EHRC commissioned cumulative assessment of tax and welfare reform changes since 2010 found that households with both disabled adults and disabled children lost out the most. So we'd want to see a guarantee that a similar thing wouldn't happen in terms of those people losing out under these proposals. And we know the Commission wants to keep things simple, and I think that is one of the strengths of this plan. But we also know, as universal credit has well evidenced, the social security system just isn't simple. And we need to retain that priority that people shouldn't be worse off, and that everybody should be afforded the chance to enjoy a decent standard of living within the plan. I think we'd also like to see what the Commission's proposed mechanisms will be for accessing the disability supplement and what the eligibility criteria will be. And with regards to personal independence payment, similarly, would want to see the proposed eligibility criteria and the mechanism for accessing it, as well as where it would sit in terms of government departments and how it would interact with the social care support system. Previously, the Commission has expressed support for deaf and disabled people's vision for the future of social care, which is encapsulated within the National Independent Living Support Service, or NILS proposals, which is great. And we'd like to see joint working with NILS in co-producing areas of overlap. Another area of overlap, as well as PIP, where we feel strongly that involvement of deaf and disabled people's organisations would be really valuable, is the area of what the Commission calls carers. And as Sharifah pointed out earlier, disabled people are disproportionately represented among those providing informal support. We stress that anything relating to people providing informal support to disabled people must be underpinned by a social model approach and ensure that proposals don't undermine disabled people's human rights, in particular with regard to Article 19 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Disabled People, and a right to full choice and control over the support we need to live in the community and participate on an equal basis with others. So those are just a few questions that we have for going forward, but well done. I think it's been a brilliant day, and I'm so proud of all the commissioners who I've enjoyed working with, and it's great that so many other organisations are here. So thank you for listening.
Just to add an extra huge thanks to Ellen there, because we've all been really grateful for all the work she's contributed in the years that the Commission has existed so far. So just a huge extra thank to Ellen, because the work wouldn't be here without her. And now on to Bill Scott. Bill Scott from Scotland. All perspectives today have been really, really important. And of course we really welcome any comments, reflections and criticisms, but we also really welcome Bill's perspective as someone who's been involved in actually bringing about changes in social security in Scotland. So hopefully this should be quite informative for all of us, and particularly anyone who doesn't know the detail of the changes. So over to you, Bill.
Thanks very much, Ellen. And greetings from Scotland. I feel very privileged to speak today to you all, preceded by all the experts by experience, some friends and colleagues from who have just spoken just before me, and new friends and colleagues, I hope. I work for Inclusion Scotland, have done for 15 years now in a variety of roles. And the story really about social security in Scotland starts with the opposition to the Welfare Reform Bill back in 2010-11. And we organised, and when I say we, I don't just mean Inclusion Scotland, I mean all our member organisations. The help from Inclusion London in terms of the analysis of that welfare reform was absolutely crucial in making the case to politicians about why they shouldn't accept the welfare reform bill in Scotland. And we worked with the Poverty Alliance, One Parent Family Scotland, allies across this, the voluntary sector, the STUC were allies, to convince politicians from both the governing party, the SNP, and the main opposition party, Labour, to vote down the legislative consent motion for the welfare reform bill. Now, you might think, well, so what? A legislative consent motion, it didn't stop it happening. No, it didn't. But in terms of reframing the debate in Scotland, it was absolutely crucial, because that was the first legislative consent motion in 12 years of the Parliament's history that was voted down by the Parliament by a majority more than 2/3. Only the Tories and Liberals voted for it. And that meant that the terms of the debate in Scotland, the public debate and the debates in Parliament, we never heard the words striver and skiver in the Scottish Parliament after winning that legislative consent motion. And to give you how rare a legislative consent motion being voted down is, it's only happened once since then, and that was the Brexit bill. That's the only other legislative consent motion that's ever been voted down in the Scottish Parliament. So it was an important victory that changed the terms of the debate. Also, there was huge public meetings, protests, etc., organised by disabled people themselves, disabled people against the cuts, Black Triangle, etc., the campaigning organisations on the ground, that we got our members along to outside Liberal and Conservative Party conferences against the bedroom tax. And that was hugely important in, again, saying these are the sort of things we will not have happening in Scotland. And so that's the background I want to say. But we had advantages that you didn't have in the rest of the UK, which is we had a parliament that was much smaller, closer to the people in many ways, and much more open, where I could and other people could, for the, policy people lobbying MSPs, could actually, if we could secure the support of 65 MSPs, we could win a debate in Parliament. That's hugely different from a Parliament with 600 and how many? 650 odd? Yeah, too many to win over. But the important thing is also you need to work with the opposition when they're in opposition to get the chance to speak to them when they're in government. So that is something I can bring to you and you should be doing now. Now, I also chair the Poverty and Inequality Commission for Scotland. Very briefly, we were created by an Act of Parliament, so it's a statutory body. We're there to monitor the Scottish Government's progress towards its child poverty reduction targets, which are that by 2030, less than 10% of Scottish children will be living in poverty. That task has been made immeasurably more difficult by the events of the last few weeks, I have to say, and with the cost of living crisis that we're facing. The Commission itself has 9 people on it. It's a mix of professionals and people with lived experience. There's a disabled woman, there's a refugee, there's a lone parent, there's those of us who come at it from a more professional background as lobbyists, researchers, etc. But I think it's a mix of skill and experience that we think works. And the other thing that we all believed in from the outset, and I believed in for probably all of my working life in the voluntary sector, which is now 30 odd years, is that the only people that know the solutions to the problems that they face are those with lived experience. So we've created, as a commission, an experts by experience panel, which are all people with lived experience in poverty, current lived experience, to co-produce with us our advice to Scottish Government. And we believe that's fundamental, and that's why I think the proposals that your commission have come up with are very much in line with our own thinking in Scotland. Right, oh, I've left my pointer back there. So.
Is there a... It's all right, no rush.
Speaking of peace. Right. Okay. So, hope this works. Hope you're seeing first page of the presentation. After the 2014 referendum on independence, the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government were given more powers by the Scotland Act of 2016. And these included devolving disability benefits, carers allowance to Scotland, along with winter fuel allowance and cold weather payments. The Scottish Parliament was also given the power to create new benefits and to top up reserve benefits. That's those benefits that the UK government retained, like universal credit, child benefit, etc. We've also got limited powers over universal credit, mainly to do with housing benefit, part of it, but also to split payments, although I have to say it's seldom, if ever, happened. And they're still working on split payments, which I believe are absolutely necessary to allow women to have financial independence within their own home, but are proving very difficult in practice because of the way that universal credit has been set up. Again, we held meetings, hundreds of disabled people. We also encouraged disabled people from our member organisations like GDA, Glasgow Disability Alliance, which has over 3,000 disabled people as members, to fill in the consultation responses prior to this Act being created. And because of that, on the face of the Act, so in legislation, it says social security is an investment in the people of Scotland. It is a human right, and it's essential to the realisation of other human rights. The delivery of social security is a public service. I'll come back to that. Respect for dignity of individuals is to be at the heart of the Scottish social security system, and the Scottish social security system is to contribute to reducing poverty in Scotland, and it is to be designed with the people of Scotland on the basis of evidence. Now, this being on the face of the bill, the Act as it now is really important. And as I say, that is only there because the lobbying that was done, not only by ourselves, but other organisations like the Poverty Alliance, One Parent Family Scotland, etc., to secure these principles on the face of the legislation. And I think you'll see those reflected in your own report. Now, the legislation specifically excludes the private sector from any involvement in the assessment of disability benefits. And again, that's important. It'll take an Act of Parliament to change that. And I don't see one coming along anytime soon. Myself and others worked for 2 amendments to the Social Security Bill as it then was. One of them was any disabled person making a claim to benefit, any benefit within the Scottish system, should have advocacy support if they wished it. And it was a big battle to get that into the Act, but it's there. The Act also recognises the importance of inclusive communication and accessible information and access to independent advice. And again, that's all on the face of the legislation. And it means since then, disabled people's organisations, disability charities representing particular impairment groups, particularly those with learning difficulties, sensory impairments, etc., neurodiverse people, have been involved in stakeholder groups working with the new Social Security Agency to actually design the communication and information that goes out for that agency. And that's, again, something absolutely new. You possibly also heard there are experience panels in Scotland. 2,500 people vast majority of them disabled people. The remainder, mainly carers, are involved in the experience panels, and again, they've had a huge role in designing the new claim forms for the new disability benefits in Scotland and the new carers benefits. And again, they're having an influence on the whole of the communication strategy for the new Social Security Agency. Other differences in approach in Scotland. The bedroom tax is fully mitigated in Scotland. That was a huge fight. But again, it helps having two lefty-centre parties vying with one another to try and secure the support of the electorate, because it's meant that we've been able to push the governing administration to say, well, Labour are in favour of fully mitigating the bedroom tax. Surely you can be as well. And they have done that. The Independent Living Fund has been retained in Scotland. It's still not open to new applicants, but there are some changes on the way there. The Scottish Welfare Fund replaced community care loans down here, and it's at least done to national guidelines, although administered by local authorities. And again, they're up to 1,140 hours of free childcare for 3- and 4-year-olds in Scotland, and that goes down to 2-year-olds for families on universal credit or other means-tested benefits. So, again, these are things that are there in your report that have been achieved already. There are also free prescriptions in Scotland, and free school meals were up to primary 5, have now just been extended to all primary school children. We've still got a way to go to get to all secondary school children, but we are making progress. And I was involved in the Free School Meals campaign when the Parliament first opened. And again, this is an achievement we've worked at for years to get there, but it can be done.
Bill, we might need
Sorry, I'm over already, I know. I'll wind up basically by saying that there are some, I can't see the screen, unfortunately. Where am I? What? Sorry? I'll go past it. Anti-poverty initiatives? No. Yeah? No. That's it. In terms of the anti-poverty initiatives, the key one is the Scottish Child Payment. When it was first introduced, it was £10 a week, £10 a week for each child below 6 in a low-income family, again, on a means-tested benefit. It doubled this year, and it will increase to £25 a week from November 14th. It is a game changer in terms of tackling child poverty. It's not enough on its own, but it is a huge investment by the Scottish Government, and equivalent in many ways to the £20 a week that was lost to families on universal credit. And the Scottish Government will be attempting to fully mitigate the benefit cap and the 2-child limit in Scotland in the coming year. So again, something that we're looking to happen if it can be done. I'm going to finish there. There are negative features to the devolved system. I can go into them if you ask me questions. But there have been a lot of positive changes, but they've been achieved through all of us working together in the third sector, the trade union movement, etc. And it couldn't be done by any single organisation. It has to be done collectively. But at the heart of it all has been the lived experience. The experts, as far as I'm concerned, are those who have to live at the sharp end of the problems. They know how those problems affect our lives, and they know the best solutions. And if we listen to them, we will achieve change. And I urge you to work right now, because I can see that there might be a change in UK politics in the next couple of years. And you need to start building the bridges to the politicians that can affect that change and convince them that the way to do it is in your report. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Bill, and I hope everyone will forgive my lax chairing, because I think there's really a lot that we can learn from Bill and activists and colleagues in Scotland. So that was really informative, and thanks to all of our other speakers as well. We don't just want a pat on the back today. We want to hear what's missing. We want to hear how we can make things better. And what better way to not get a pat on the back than to open it up for questions, comments, and criticisms. So we do have some questions. I can't see the screen. Are they there? They're not. Yeah. But they will be. There they are. So we are going to open out these questions. These questions should hopefully be going out on the live stream as well, if the fancy live stream tech is all lined up smoothly. So I'm going to read them through, and it is definitely, if you've got any questions or comments for any one of the group, for any one of the speakers, let us know, and we're happy to do that. But we would really like to turn it round on you as well and say, what is it that we can do? What is it that's missing from our plan? What do you think is needed to create a decent social security system? How do you think we might bring people together to campaign for our plan? Would your organisation support our plan? We don't want to be isolated in our calls for change. We know that that's going to take a lot of working together with other groups and organisations. So we want to know how we can do this best. So this is probably going to be a bit of a complicated free-for-all right now, because I've got some questions that are going to come in on my tablet here. So what I might do is start with anyone in the room, if you've got any questions or comments, and then Maria, thank you Maria, is going to go with the mic around the room.
Hello, my name is Wayne Green. I've been asked to come here by Church Action on Poverty. And Church Action on Poverty at the moment are running a campaign called Dignity, Agency and Access to Power. And I sit on the Leaders Experts panel as well, which is national. What I would like to say also, just a couple of things, is one, is when Mrs Thatcher came into power, she moved the social security system, and I'm glad people are using the word social security rather than welfare, handouts, benefits, because that is the correct word, not these American terms. I would like to say, she moved the welfare system from RPI to CPI. Have you taken that account into your modelling?
What does that mean, what you're saying? I don't understand.
Retail price indexed to consumer price indexed, which means it is a lesser cost to the social security system in relation to the costing of living. Also with the rise of inflation being at 10%. Also, I was also interesting to note that actually the Centre for Welfare Reform states the largest cost to the social security system is actually the administration of the system and consultants and outsourcing. So maybe that could be factored into an area. And above all, we do enter the world of politics. And in my professional life, and I'm experienced unemployed at the moment, is a political lobbyist within international relations. And I can say to you now, the UN wrote a report saying that actually the government has an ideological path, and it can change that path, but it is ideological. And coming to that, in the real world of politics, you're going to have to take into account of that the tactics and strategies to combat that.
Thank you very much. And I think we'll take another couple of comments and reflections as well over there.
Thank you. My name's Paul Atherton. I've contributed to the Commission as it's developed over the years. I've been homeless for 13 years. I suffer with a disability known as MECFS, so I'm supposed to get ESA and PIP, but I've had a reduced level of ESA for 2 years and no PIP for 2.5. I managed to take the DWP to court to just get them to email me after a judicial review of 2 years. And so I'm kind of really intrigued by how we're going to take, and again, going back to your point, we have this notion of inflation, but more importantly, the ideological sense of almost going back to the idea of 100 plus years ago, of kind of going, it's that attitude of work or die that the media seems happy to support, the government are clearly happy to support. There is a proportion of the public that are so wrapped up with just surviving day by day that anything sort of external to their own experience is almost blinded to them. Is how we're going to get through all of that noise and actually effectively get the public on board to be able to press the politicians to do the right thing in a system that's been so embedded in our culture that if you read The Ragged-Trousered Philanthropists back in 1914, the language and the situation is identical a century later.
Thank you very much. And yes, would you like to? And then I'm going to take a couple of questions and comments from the live stream.
Well, thank you. I'm James Sandbach from the London Zinservice Network. And I mean, Anne actually mentioned the important role of Vice Services. And I mean, in some ways, in an ideal world, actually, we shouldn't really be there. We shouldn't actually be existing. But I think one of the biggest problems with the social security system is the legal complexity that's been, and the volumes and volumes and volumes of legislative complexity that's now baked into the system over decades. We've created such an incredibly complicated system. And one of the priorities should surely be, not just a kind of policy simplification, but also legal simplification of the whole structure as well. And I'm just sort of interested in the Commission's thoughts on what generally, how do you see the kind of role of the advice sector and intermediaries and the support that the sector provides.
What was your name, sorry?
James Sandbach.
James, thank you for that. I'm going to ask some of our group to make some comments in response to that, but I am going to read a couple of comments from the live stream. Anna Webb: when people cannot get the help they need in a timely fashion, they will be needing more social services sooner. Rather than what it will cost, I think we should concentrate more on what it would save. And I think that's a very interesting point there. Cameron Malik from Disability Rights UK commented on the live stream, it would be good to do something to inform local organisations of disabled people's organisations of this and find what they can do locally to share the findings and recommendations. And they've said we can support this at Disability Rights UK. And I think we definitely agree this would be a really great and important thing to do, and we would really welcome that support from Disability Rights UK in making that happen. Hopefully that's given enough time for the mic to get over that side of the room. Or Michael, you coming up to make any reflections? But I'll also offer it out to any other members of our steering group. If you want to... Yeah, Chair? Wherever.
Hi everybody. Sorry. Hi everybody. I'm Michael, the Commission on Social Security Project Coordinator. I always get rolled out for the questions. I think I'm the anorak of the group, aren't I? I'm not going to answer those points because they're all brilliant points. No one's going to disagree with them. They're exactly the kind of things we have consistently had to try and tackle. Everyone's been so nice about the commissioners today, but I've been there from day one, so I know the truth. And there's a really big failing with the commissioners. And that's they're just too modest. They don't know how brilliant this work is. And all those points that have been made, yeah, we considered them. We're a really small group of people. If people can give us the answers, that's what we really need on these points of detail. We've talked about we need to do more work around disability, doing exactly those points that Ellen Clifford was talking about. We need support to do that. When we were doing the proposals, inflation had been really low for a very long time, and now we're suddenly hit with it. So RPI, all those questions come back. And so as I say, I feel a bit bad not actually answering the questions, but they're good points. We're going to agree with them. But it's how do we take this forward? And Nikki Hawkins, who spoke earlier, has this brilliant slide about us as progressives interested in this field. And the slide has on one side a picture of a whole load of seagulls. And you know when seagulls are all squawking, you know, mine, or me, making all that noise, it's what about us? As opposed to, I never know, I'm going to get this word wrong. When starlings gather together, it's a murmuration, is it? Beautiful, all working together. And so Ellen Morrison's made the point, and it's the real critical point underpins this. We've done, and the commissioners have done it remarkable work getting together this plan. Yeah. The importance of that cannot be understated. There is no alternative sat out there of an alternative blueprint to this. We can look to Scotland, we can work with Scotland, but this is what we've got here today. But this can be something that is just another interesting project, another interesting piece of work. If anything is going to happen, it's by people working together, people joining together, and that's a choice we all make. Do we each be a little seagull squeaking me, or do we come together and work together? And I very much hope it'll be the latter. Thank you very much.
So that really left us on quite a positive note there. We would say, though, if you've got any more kind of, I think our Scottish contingent are just too excited, just chatting away.
How we use Scotland as a tactic to push for change in Westminster, although I live in London now, so
We want to hear more. So I think really anyone else who's watching in the live stream or anyone else in the room, if you've got any more kind of comments or reflections, we do really want to hear them. So please do let us know. We are going to, just before I wrap up, we are going to have a poem, and you all saw Sharifah contribute earlier over video, and Sharifah is many things, but she is also a poet. And Osmond has very kindly agreed to read Sharifah's poem today, as she can't be here. So over to you, Osmond.
Well, hello everyone. Hopefully I can do Sharifah's poem some justice. Inclusive World by Sharifah Patel. Inclusive word for you and me. Is it a dream or a reality? Include us, we say, no matter just like you and me. We disabled people are human too. Give a chance, and we will show you. Listen to us, you may learn a trick or two. Well, we may have no voice, we may not hear, nor be able-bodied. We do have hearts, just like you. Value us and respect us. We give the same respect back. Include us, not segregate us. Damage done this way can be everlasting. We all just want to belong in an inclusive world. This dream, our dream, would come true. I wouldn't have to pinch myself. It would be real life, real people, real society, including all and me. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Osmond and, of course, Sharifah, who wrote the poem. I've got some other thank yous to do before I wrap up, and that is to the people who've been here providing communication support today. So Paul, who has done an incredible job interpreting so much of our session today when normally interpreters work in pairs. So a huge thank you to Paul for taking on so much of that today. We really appreciate it. And to Norma and Julia, who I just surprised with a poem there as well. Same with Paul. I just threw that in as a curveball at the end. Sorry, and thanks so much for your work today. And of course to Martin, who has been doing the live stream so excellently over there and making it look very professional today. So huge thanks to Martin. And of course, to our experts by experience who have made all of the plan possible, and everyone who came and spoke today. We really appreciate all of your feedback, all of your comments, everything that you've contributed to today, and we're around. So if there's any comments you want to make, if there's any other questions, if we can't answer them today, then do get in touch. And we really just appreciate you being here. And I've avoided looking directly at the camera the whole time, but thank you everyone on the live stream for watching as well. That's it. Thank you very much.